Welcome to our deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at the human side of spaceflight. We've all seen the amazing images and heard the incredible stories, but what does it really take to become an astronaut? What's it really like to blast off into the unknown and face the challenges of living and working in space?
It's a fascinating journey, and luckily we have some incredible resources to guide us today.
Yeah, we've got Tim Peake's book, Space, which gives an amazing firsthand account of his time on the International Space Station.
And I've also pulled together some archival material, interviews, mission logs, that kind of thing, to give us a broader perspective.
Right, because what we really want to do is go beyond the, kind of romanticized image of the astronaut.
Yeah, peel back the layers and see the human behind the spacesuit.
Exactly. So to kick things off, let's talk about astronaut selection. I always imagined it to be like picking the best of the best Top Gun in space.
That's a pretty common picture people have, right? But in reality, it's much more nuanced, and it's evolved a lot over time.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, in the early days of space exploration, the focus was very much on military test pilots.
Right, like the Mercury 7. Those guys were practically superheroes.
Yeah, exactly. They were the epitome of the right stuff. But even with their incredible skills, selection wasn't a given.
I guess there's always got to be someone who doesn't make the cut.
But there's an interesting story about Deke Slayton, one of the original Mercury 7. He was actually grounded due to a heart condition.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. So that was it. Career over.
Well, no, instead he became head of astronaut selection.
Really?
Wow.
So he had this incredible influence over who got to fly to space and who stayed earthbound.
Exactly. And it makes you think about the criteria, right? How much of it was objective, how much was influenced by his own experiences, maybe even biases.
That's a fascinating thought. Imagine having that kind of power over people's dreams.
And as space exploration evolved, so did the astronaut selection process. Longer missions like Skylab and the ISS demanded a wider range of skills.
So it wasn't just about being a hotshot pilot anymore.
Exactly. They needed scientists, engineers, people from diverse backgrounds to conduct experiments, maintain life support, the whole shebang.
So they were looking for a different kind of astronaut, not just the daredevils.
Right. Someone who could handle the unexpected, the mental and emotional pressures, as well as the physical ones.
The ultimate multitasker.
And that's where the rigorous testing comes in. It's not about finding superheroes. It's about identifying potential weaknesses, things that could become critical in the unforgiving environment of space.
Wow, that's intense. It's not just about being the best. It's about being prepared for the worst.
Exactly. You've got to be able to adapt, to think on your feet, to stay calm under pressure.
And that brings us to another crucial aspect of the astronaut experience, training. How do you even begin to prepare for something as literally out of this world as spaceflight?
Well, simulators are key. They're these incredibly sophisticated machines that can recreate almost every aspect of a space mission.
Yeah. Peake talks about them a lot in his book. He says they have simulators for launch, docking, landing, even emergencies.
Right, and they're designed to push astronauts to their absolute limits.
Like boot camp for space.
Kind of. There's one simulator in particular that's quite infamous, the Lunar Landing Training Vehicle, or LLTV. They called it the flying bedstead because it was so ungainly.
I've seen pictures. It looks kind of crazy.
It was notoriously difficult to control. Even Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon, nearly crashed it during a training exercise.
Wow, really? That's hard to imagine.
Right, you've got this icon of human achievement struggling to keep this contraption in the air.
It really underscores just how challenging astronaut training is.
It's not enough to be a skilled pilot or a brilliant scientist. You need that extra level of mental and physical toughness, that ability to react instinctively under pressure.
And it sounds like the training can be almost as demanding as the actual spaceflight.
In some ways, maybe even more so, because in a simulator, they can throw every conceivable problem at you to see how you react.
And it's not just about handling the physical demands, is it? There are huge psychological pressures as well.
Absolutely. The isolation, sensory deprivation, the constant demands of a mission, all while being confined in a small spacecraft, it takes a toll.
And tragically, there have been cases where those pressures have proven fatal.
Yeah. The story of Valentin Bondarenko is a stark reminder of the risks involved. He was a Soviet cosmonaut who died in a fire during an isolation test back in the early days of the space program.
It's a sobering reminder. that these pioneers were pushing the boundaries of human experience, and we were still learning about the psychological as well as the physical effects of spaceflight.
Absolutely. And even today, with all we've learned, the human factor remains one of the biggest challenges, especially as we look to longer duration missions.
Right, because even with the best training, you can't fully prepare for the reality of living in space. The isolation, the confinement, the constant awareness of the risks.
And it's not just about surviving those challenges, it's about maintaining mental well-being, working effectively as a team, making clear decisions under pressure.
A lot to unpack there, and I think that's a good segue to our next topic.
Yeah.
The actual experience of spaceflight itself.
hmm
What was it like to be up there, to face those triumphs and setbacks, to experience the reality versus the romanticized image of space travel?
That's where Peake's book really comes alive. He gives us such a vivid sense of the emotional roller coaster that is spaceflight, and we'll delve into that more after a short break.
Seems good. We'll be right back. All right, we're back, and we were just talking about, the reality of spaceflight, the highs and lows, the things you just can't prepare for.
Exactly. It's one thing to train in a simulator, but actually being up there, experiencing the vastness of space, the isolation, it's a whole other ballgame.
And I think that really comes across in Peake's book. He talks about the euphoria of launch, the awe-inspiring views from the ISS, but also the moments of fear, the close calls, the sheer physical and mental challenges.
He doesn't shy away from the tough stuff. And I
Right.
think that makes his account all the more powerful. He tells this funny story about Gordon Cooper, one of the original Mercury astronauts.
Oh, yeah, what was that?
Apparently, Cooper was caught snoring on the launch pad right before liftoff.
Ah, no way. I can't believe they let that one slip.
Well, it was a different time, I guess, but it just goes to show that even these legendary astronauts were human.
They had their quirks and their flaws just like the rest of us.
And they faced incredible risks. We tend to focus on the triumphs, but it's important to remember the tragedies as well. The Apollo 1 fire, the Soyuz 1 re-entry failure, the Challenger explosion.
Those events really shook the world. They were stark reminders of just how dangerous spaceflight is, how much we're pushing the boundaries of human capability.
And I think it raises a really important question. How do astronauts cope with that constant risk, with the knowledge that something could go wrong at any moment?
Yeah, it must take an incredible amount of courage and mental fortitude.
Peake talks about the importance of compartmentalization, of focusing on the task at hand and not dwelling on the what-ifs.
That makes sense. You can't let fear paralyze you, especially in such a high-stakes environment.
And it's not just about individual resilience. It's about trusting your crewmates, knowing that you have each other's backs no matter what.
The ultimate team effort.
Right. And the Challenger disaster in particular led to a major shift in thinking about spaceflight. There was a long pause in the U.S. space program as everyone grappled with the enormity of what had happened.
It was a real turning point. People started questioning whether the risks were worth it, whether we should be sending humans into space at all.
But the human desire to explore, to push beyond our limits, is so strong. And eventually, the space program resumed with a renewed focus on safety and a deeper understanding of the human element.
Because in the end, it's that human element that makes space exploration so compelling. It's about the people who dare to dream, who risk their lives to expand our knowledge of the universe.
Absolutely. And as we look to the future of space exploration, to missions to Mars and beyond, understanding the human factor becomes even more crucial.
Right, because those missions will be longer, more challenging, more isolating than anything we've done before.
We're talking about years in space, with communication delays, no possibility of a quick rescue. It's going to require a whole new level of psychological and emotional preparation.
And it makes you wonder, what kind of person can handle that? What kind of traits will future astronauts need to possess?
Well, resilience is key, obviously. They'll need to be able to cope with stress, isolation, unexpected challenges.
And adaptability, too.
Right.
Things will inevitably go wrong, and they'll need to think on their feet, come up with creative solutions.
And teamwork will be more important than ever. These crews will be completely reliant on each other, with no outside help for years on end.
So we're not just talking about physical and technical skills anymore. It's about mental toughness, emotional intelligence, the ability to collaborate effectively under extreme pressure.
Exactly. We're going to need to select individuals who not only have the right stuff, but also the right mindsets for these deep space missions.
And it's not just about sending them out there. We need to think about their return as well. How do we support them when they come back to Earth after such a transformative experience?
That's a great point, and it's something we'll be discussing in our next segment, the impact of spaceflight on those who return, how they readjust to life on Earth, how their perspectives change, and how they use their experiences to make a difference.
Looking forward to that. But for now, let's take a quick break and we'll be right back to explore the lasting legacy of space travel on the human spirit.
And we're back. You know, it's really incredible to think about what these astronauts go through, not just the physical challenges of spaceflight, but the mental and emotional adjustments as well.
Yeah, it's like having your whole worldview shifted and then having to come back to reality.
Exactly. And that's what we want to dive into now. The impact of spaceflight on those who return.
Because it's not just about planting a flag or collecting data, it's about the human experience, the way space travel transforms you on a fundamental level.
One of the most fascinating aspects of this is the overview effect. Have you heard of that?
Oh, absolutely. It's that profound shift in perspective that astronauts experience when they see Earth from space. You know, that iconic image of a blue marble hanging in the void. It's one thing to see a picture, but to actually be there to witness it firsthand.
It must be breathtaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, astronauts often describe it as a life-altering experience. They see the Earth as a whole, a fragile oasis in the vastness of space.
And suddenly, all those things that seem so important down here, the borders, the conflicts, the day-to-day worries,
They kind of fade away in the face of that cosmic perspective. You realize how interconnected we all are, how precious and vulnerable our planet is.
it's amazing to think about the impact that must have on your worldview, your sense of purpose, your priorities.
Definitely. And there are so many incredible stories about how astronauts have channeled that experience into their lives back on Earth.
Like Rusty Schweickart, who flew on Apollo 9. He became a passionate advocate for planetary defense, raising awareness about the threat of asteroid impacts.
It's as if seeing Earth from space gave him a new mission, a sense of responsibility to protect this pale blue dot.
And Edgar Mitchell, who walked on the moon during Apollo 14, he had a very different but equally profound transformation.
Yeah, he became convinced of the existence of extraterrestrial life and dedicated himself to exploring consciousness and unexplained phenomena.
Wow, that's fascinating. It shows how spaceflight can open your mind to new possibilities, challenge your assumptions about the universe and our place in it.
Absolutely. It can be a catalyst for personal growth, for reevaluating your beliefs and finding new meaning in your life.
But it's not always an easy transition, is it? Coming back to Earth after such a transformative experience.
Not at all. There's the fame, the media attention, the pressure to live up to the image of a hero.
And then there's the challenge of readjusting to normal life. After experiencing the ultimate high of space travel, how do you find something that compares?
Many astronauts talk about a sense of anticlimax, of struggling to find a new purpose that feels as meaningful as their time in space.
Like, what do you do for an encore after walking on the moon?
Exactly. And that's why post-flight support is so crucial. It's not just about physical rehabilitation, but also about helping astronauts process their experiences and find new ways to contribute.
Because they have so much to offer, right? Their stories, their insights, their unique perspectives on humanity and our place in the universe.
They're living proof of what we're capable of our resilience, our ingenuity, our drive to explore.
And as we venture further into space, their experiences will continue to inspire and guide us.
Because the journey of space exploration is ultimately a reflection of the human spirit. Our boundless curiosity, our yearning to push beyond the limits of what we know and what we think is possible.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Go for it.
If you were given the opportunity, knowing all the challenges and risks, would you go to space?
That's a tough one. It's a question we all have to answer for ourselves. But it speaks to something fundamental about human nature, doesn't it?
That drive to explore, to push the boundaries, to see what's out there.
And whether we personally make it to space or not, I think we can all be inspired by the stories of those who have dared to dream and to reach for the stars.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the human side of spaceflight. See you next time.